A desperate plea. The Galactic Council chamber was filled with a suffocating tension as the assembled diplomats took their seats. The ornate room, usually a place of measured discussion and political maneuvering, now held an air of desperation. At the central podium, Councillor Zorax of the Andorian Federation cleared his throat, his blue skin glistening under the bright lights. Esteemed members of the Council, I come before you today with grave news. The Zorgan invasion has pushed our combined forces to the brink of collapse. Murmurs of unease rippled through the gathered dignitaries. The Zorgans, a ruthless insectoid species from the galactic rim, had swept across the stars like a plague, consuming every civilization in their path. Zorax continued, his voice strained. Our fleets are in ruins, our armies scattered. If we do not find a way to stop the Zorgans, we face nothing less than the total annihilation of our way of life. What do you propose? Asked Ambassador Tralax of the Saurian League, his reptilian eyes narrowing. We have already committed every ship, every soldier we have to this war. Zorax's gaze swept the room, as if seeking any flicker of hope. There is one faction we have not yet approached. One species that has remained aloof from our conflicts, but whose strength is whispered of in the darkest corners of the galaxy. He paused, as if afraid to say the word aloud. Humans. A shocked silence descended, broken only by scattered whispers. The humans were an enigma. A relatively young species who had achieved faster-than-light travel only a few centuries prior. They had never sought to expand their territory or engage in the political intrigues that consumed the older races. You can't be serious, scoffed Trelax. The humans are primitives, barely a step above their own barbaric past. What help could they possibly offer? Zorax's expression hardened. Do not let their peaceful facade fool you. The humans are warriors, perhaps the greatest our galaxy has ever known. If we can convince them to join our cause, they may be our only hope. The debate raged for hours, but in the end, a consensus was reached. The Galactic Council would approach the humans and plead for their aid against the Zorgan threat. It was a desperate gamble, but with their very survival at stake, they had no choice but to try. As the meeting adjourned, Zorax couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to awaken something far more powerful and terrifying than they could possibly imagine. The humans, for all their mystery, were about to take center stage in a conflict that would shape the fate of the galaxy itself. Awakening the sleeping giants. Ambassador Elara Sinclair stared out the viewport of her shuttle as it descended through the atmosphere of the planet Galaxis Prime, the capital world of the Galactic Council. The sprawling cityscape below was a marvel of alien architecture, soaring spires and gleaming domes that seemed to defy gravity itself. But Elara had no time to admire the view. She and her fellow human ambassadors had been summoned to an emergency session of the Council, and the urgency in Councillor Zorax's message had been palpable. As they landed and were escorted into the Great Hall, Elara couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in her gut. Humanity had worked hard to maintain its neutrality in galactic affairs, focusing instead on peaceful exploration and scientific advancement. For the Council to approach them now, the situation must be truly dire. Elara and her team took their seats in the human section of the chamber, ignoring the curious and sometimes fearful glances from the alien dignitaries. Zorax took the central podium, his face grave. Ambassadors of Earth, he began, I thank you for answering our call. I will not mince words. The Galactic Council faces its darkest hour. The Zorgans have pushed us to the brink of extinction, and we have nowhere left to turn. He went on to describe the devastation the insectoid invaders had wrought. Entire systems laid waste, billions dead or enslaved. The once proud fleets of the Council races had been reduced to burning husks, unable to stem the Zorgan tide. As Elara listened, a cold realization dawned on her. The Council wasn't just asking for help. They were begging for salvation. They wanted humanity to unleash the full might of its war machine, to become the saviors of a galaxy that had long dismissed them as upstarts and primitives. Ambassador Singh, Ilara's colleague, spoke up. Counselor Zorax, we understand the gravity of your situation, but surely you must realize that what you're asking goes against every principle of non-interference that humanity holds dear. Zorax's expression was pleading. I know we have no right to ask this of you, but if the Zorgans are not stopped, there will be no galaxy left for anyone to hold dear. Zorax's expression was pleading. I know we have no right to ask this of you, but if the Zorgans are not stopped, there will be no galaxy left for anyone to hold dear. Ilara exchanged glances with her fellow ambassadors. She knew in her heart that they could not stand by while an entire civilization was exterminated. But she also knew the cost that would come with intervention, the blood that would be on human hands. In the end, it was Ambassador Nakamura who voiced what they were all thinking. We will bring your plea before our government and military. If humanity agrees to join this war, it will be on our terms, and with the understanding that we fight not for conquest, but for the survival of all free species. Relief washed over Zorax's face. That is all we can ask. The Council is in your debt. As the human delegation filed out of the chamber, Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that they had just taken the first step down a path from which there would be no return. Humanity had been content to remain the sleeping giants of the galaxy, but now they were about to awaken to their true potential, for better or for worse. The decision to intervene was not made lightly. The Earth Alliance Parliament debated fiercely, weighing the risks of entanglement against the moral imperative to prevent genocide. But in the end, the vote was clear. Humanity would go to war. The great shipyards of Earth and its colonies, long dedicated to the construction of exploratory and scientific vessels, thrummed with new purpose. Massive warships took shape, bristling with advanced weapons that had only existed in theoretical research. Regiments of soldiers, clad in powered armor and wielding directed energy weapons, boarded transport ships by the millions. For the first time in centuries, the full industrial and military might of the human race was roused to action. And as the first human battle groups set course for the front lines, the galaxy trembled at their coming. Shock and awe. The bridge of the Zorgan dreadnought Psychrek buzzed with activity as alarm klaxons blared. The ship's commander, Overlord Zaxel, clenched his mandibles in irritation. Report, he hissed at his tactical officer. What's happening? The officer, his kitten rattling with nervousness, said, Overlord, we're detecting a massive energy surge near the edge of the system. It's like nothing we've ever seen. Zaxel's compound eyes narrowed. The Zorgan fleet had swept aside the defenses of this system with contemptuous ease, as they had every other council world they'd invaded. What new trick were these primitives trying now? His answer came in the form of a blinding flash that filled the view screens, washing out the starfield. As the sensors adjusted, Zaxel felt a chill run down his segmented spine. A vast armada of ships had appeared at the system's edge, popping into existence as if from nowhere. Their hulls were angular and sleek, utterly unlike the bulbous designs favored by the council races, and they were big, dwarfing even the largest Zorgan dreadnoughts. By the Queen, whispered the tactical officer. Those are human ships. Zaxel felt a flicker of uncertainty. He'd heard rumors of the humans, of course, a young, technologically advanced species that had stubbornly refused to bow to the council. But he dismissed them as just another primate race, barely worthy of the Zorgan's notice. Now, as he watched the human fleet deploy with clinical precision, he began to realize how badly he'd misjudged them. The human ships opened fire, and the Zorgan fleet learned the meaning of shock and awe. Lances of incandescent energy scythed through the void, bypassing shields as if they weren't there and cutting through hulls like a scalpel through kitten. Zorgan ships burst like rotten fruit, spilling atmosphere and bodies into the void. The dreadnoughts returned fire, but their plasma cannons splashed harmlessly against the human vessels' shimmering energy screens. Fighters poured from the human carriers, darting between the lumbering Zorgan ships with impossible agility. They wove patterns of death, picking off gun turrets and engine ports with surgical precision. On the planet below, Human dropships screamed through the atmosphere, disgorging armored soldiers into the heart of the Zorgan occupation. The insectoid warriors, so used to inflicting terror on others, now found themselves facing an enemy that knew no fear. The humans fought with a ferocity and coordination the Zorgans had never encountered. They moved as one, their powered suits enhancing their strength and speed to superhuman levels. Their weapons tore through Zorgan armor like paper, leaving charred ruin in their wake. In a matter of hours, the system was cleared of Zorgan forces. As the smoke cleared, the council races emerged from their bunkers and hiding places, staring in awe at their saviors. But even as they cheered, there was an undercurrent of unease. The humans had won a great victory, yes, but the sheer scale of the destruction they had unleashed was terrifying. These were not the actions of a species interested in measured response or minimal force. As the human fleet consolidated its position and prepared to push on to the next Zorgan-held system, Counselor Zorax couldn't shake the feeling that they had unleashed something far more powerful and unpredictable than they had ever imagined. The Zorgans had been beaten back, but at what cost? Turning the tide. News of the humans' victory spread like wildfire across the occupied systems. For the first time since the invasion began, the Zorgan advance faltered. Their commanders, so used to easy conquests, now found themselves on the defensive, forced to react to human strikes rather than dictating the pace of the war. And the humans pressed their advantage with ruthless efficiency. Their fleets seemed to be everywhere at once, striking at Zorgan supply lines, liberating enslaved populations, and driving the insectoid invaders back system by system. At the forefront of this offensive was Admiral Nolan Stark, the gruff, no-nonsense commander of the human expeditionary force. Stark had been a controversial choice for the role. A veteran of Earth's unification wars, he was known for his aggressive tactics and willingness to accept high casualties in pursuit of victory. But as the human forces racked up win after win, even Stark's critics had to admit that his methods were effective. Under his leadership, the once demoralized council races rallied, their ships and soldiers fighting with renewed vigor alongside their human allies. Yet even as the tide of war turned, there were those within the Galactic Council who watched the human advance with growing unease. The speed and scale of the human offensives were astounding, but so too was the collateral damage they left in their wake. Entire planets were left scared and lifeless, their ecosystems ravaged by the humans' weapons of mass destruction. Zorgan-held cities were reduced to rubble, their populations caught in the crossfire of human orbital bombardments. Some counselors began to whisper that the humans were no saviors, but rather a new breed of conqueror, one that would stop at nothing to achieve total victory. They pointed to the growing number of human bases and outposts being established in liberated systems, arguing that Earth was positioning itself to fill the power vacuum left by the Zorgans' defeat. These concerns came to a head in a heated council session, where Counselor Trolax of the Saurian League voiced what many were thinking. "The humans are out of control," he said, his reptilian features twisted in anger. "They rampage across the galaxy like a wildfire, consuming everything in their path. How can we be sure that once the Zorgans are defeated, they will not turn their weapons on us?" Ambassador Elara Sinclair, the human representative to the council, rose to respond. "With all due respect, Counselor, the human forces are doing what you asked of us. We are breaking the Zorgan hold on your worlds, saving billions of lives in the process." Trolax hissed, "and taking billions more in the process. Your tactics are little better than the Zorgan's own." Ilara's eyes narrowed. "This is war, Counselor. It is brutal, it is ugly, but it is necessary. We humans learned that lesson the hard way in the fires of our own history. Sometimes, the only way to save a life is to take one." As the debate raged on, Admiral Stark studied the holographic star map in his flagship's war room. The Zorgan Empire had been reduced to a handful of systems, their once mighty fleets in tatters. One system glowed a baleful red at the center of the map, Zorgus Prime, the heart of the insectoid empire. Stark knew that the war would not end until the Zorgan leadership was decapitated, their will to fight shattered once and for all. He turned to his assembled captains, his face set in a grim mask of determination. "Prepare the fleet for a final assault. We end this here and now." The decision was made. The wheel of fate turned, and the galaxy held its breath, wondering what kind of future the human victory would bring. The final assault. Zorgas Prime hung in space, a mottled brown orb shrouded in a haze of industrial pollution. This was the birthplace of the Zorgan Empire, the nexus from which their conquering fleets had poured forth to terrorize the galaxy. Now, it was the last bastion of their dominion, a heavily fortified world bristling with defenses. Vast orbital platforms studded the skies above the planet, each one housing enough firepower to reduce a continent to molten slag. Swarms of fighters buzzed between them, while dreadnoughts the size of cities took up defensive positions. Facing this formidable gauntlet was the might of the human fleet, the largest armada ever assembled in the history of the galaxy. Thousands of ships hung in formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of the system's star. At the center of this host was the flagship Indomitable, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed even the Zorgan Leviathans. On its bridge stood Admiral Stark, his eyes fixed on the tactical displays. "All ships, prepare for jump," he ordered, his voice calm and steady. "We hit them hard and fast, punch through their orbital defenses, and establish a beachhead on the surface." Acknowledgments flooded in from across the fleet. Marines checked their weapons, pilots strapped into their fighters, and gunners primed their cannon. Then, in a flash of distorted space, the human fleet leaped forward, hurled across the vast gulf of the system by the arcane science of their jump drives. The Zorgans were ready for them. The moment the human ships materialized, the orbital platforms opened fire, filling the void with a storm of plasma and missiles. Fighters swarmed forward, their chitinous hulls glinting in the glare of the explosions. But the humans did not flinch. Their shields absorbed the worst of the barrage, while their point defense systems filled the sky with flak, shredding the Zorgan fighters like so much chaff. The Indomitable led the charge, its mighty guns roaring as it plunged into the heart of the Zorgan defenses. Dreadnoughts clashed like ancient gods, their hulls buckling under the titanic energies unleashed. Stark gripped the arms of his command chair as the ship shuddered around him. "Status report. Shields at 30%, reported his tactical officer. But we're through their main line. Assault transports are launching now." On the planet below, Zorgan soldiers scrambled to their defensive positions as the sky filled with the fiery trails of human drop pods. The pods slammed into the earth, disgorging squads of power-armored Marines into the heart of the enemy strongholds. The fighting was brutal and close quarters, a far cry from the clean, clinical strikes the humans had executed before. The Zorgans fought with the desperate ferocity of a species that knew it was facing extinction, throwing themselves at the human lines in waves. But the humans would not be denied. They pushed forward, taking losses but never stopping, never faltering. In the skies above, the last of the Zorgan ships fell, blasted into oblivion by the relentless human onslaught. In the heart of the Zorgan capital, the human forces converged on the Imperial Palace, a towering edifice of black metal and pulsing energy. This was the seat of the Zorgan Queen, the nerve center of their empire. The Marines blasted their way inside, fighting through the elite guards and autonomous defense systems. In the throne room, they found the Queen herself, a monstrous creature the size of a tank, her carapace gleaming with bioluminescent patterns. But even she could not stand against the might of humanity unleashed. In a final, desperate battle, she fell, her cries echoing through the vaulted halls. And with that, it was over. The Zorgan Empire, which had once seemed poised to conquer the galaxy, was no more. Their cities lay in ruins, their fleets were shattered, and their leadership was decimated. Across the liberated systems, the news was met with jubilation. Crowds poured into the streets, cheering the human soldiers as saviors and liberators. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session, where a tearful counselor Zorax formally declared the war over. But even amidst the celebrations, there was a sense of unease, a question lingering in the air. What now? The humans had proven themselves to be the most powerful military force in the known universe, capable of toppling an empire that had seemed invincible. As the dust settled and the parades ended, the galaxy looked to Earth with a mixture of gratitude, respect, and fear. The sleeping giants had awoken, and the cosmos would never be the same. The bitter aftermath. The war was over, but the scars it left behind would not heal easily. Across the galaxy, the toll of the conflict was staggering. Trillions dead, entire worlds reduced to ruins, economies shattered, and societies traumatized. The human forces, true to their word, did not claim the Zorgan worlds as their own. Instead, they turned their vast resources towards rebuilding, pouring aid and support into the devastated systems. But not everyone welcomed this assistance. To some, the humans' generosity smacked of patronage, a subtle form of domination cloaked in the guise of charity. Whispers began to circulate of human corporations setting up shop on war-torn worlds, exploiting the chaos to secure exclusive trade deals and resource rights. There were other concerns, too. The council races had seen firsthand the destructive potential of human weaponry, and many feared what might happen if that power was turned against them. After all, if the humans could topple the Zorgans so easily, what chance would any other species have? These fears came to a head when a new faction emerged within the Galactic Council, the Sovereignty Movement. Led by Councillor Trulax of the Saurian League, the movement argued that the galaxy could not truly be free until it was free of human influence. The humans say they are not our masters, Trulax said in a fiery speech to the council. But what choice do we have but to obey them? Their ships patrol our space, their soldiers garrison our worlds. We are grateful for their aid, yes, but we must not let gratitude blind us to the threat they pose. The sovereignty movement gained traction rapidly, especially among those species who had long chafed under council rule and saw an opportunity to assert their independence. There were rallies and demonstrations, calls for the humans to withdraw their forces and leave the galaxy to govern itself. For their part, the human leadership seemed bemused by the controversy. They had never asked to be the galaxy's policemen, and many were eager to bring their soldiers home and focus on their own affairs. In a candid moment, Admiral Stark was overheard commenting, "We didn't start this war, and we don't want another one. If they want us gone, we'll go." But others within the Earth government argued that a full withdrawal would be irresponsible. The galaxy was still unstable, they contended, and a power vacuum could lead to even more chaos and bloodshed. Amidst all the debate and uncertainty, one thing was clear: the age of human isolation was over. Whether as allies, overlords, or something in between, Earth could no longer pretend to be separate from the wider cosmos. In the end, a compromise was reached. The human forces would draw down gradually, handing over security responsibilities to local authorities and the reformed Galactic Council. But they would maintain a presence, ready to respond if a new threat emerged. It was not a perfect solution, but it was a start. As the last human warships departed for Earth, leaving behind a galaxy still struggling to find its way, many wondered what the future would hold. Would the fragile peace hold, or would new conflicts arise to take the Zorgan's place? Would the humans be content to remain the reluctant guardians of galactic stability, or would the temptations of power prove too great to resist? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain: the galaxy had been forever changed by the human intervention, and whatever challenges lay ahead, they would have to be faced together, human and alien alike. The Zorgan War had ended, but the story of the galaxy and humanity's place in it was only just beginning.